Welcome to the Children's Tradition Podcast, where we introduce families to the poetic life.
Hello, my name is Amanda Foss, and I am here today with McKenzie Westrom. We are beginning a new series on the Children's Tradition Podcast, where we are going to interview TCT moms, the women who are applying it on the ground, and we are going to hear just all the different ways and it's being applied in unique homes. Education, while we are trying to offer an education that is a human education for all, the practical trappings of that are going to look different depending on the families and the children involved. And so I am just super excited for this opportunity to talk to McKenzie and other moms over the next few months so that we can get a vision of what does a poetic life look like just in the day-to-day. But McKenzie, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So I would love just for this whole series, I really want to I think how we were educated ourselves is really formative in how we end up thinking about education later, for better or for worse, right? Whether it's a positive or negative experience. And so I would just love to hear a little bit before we talk about the children's tradition. What was your background as far as your education and how you were educated and what led you into homeschooling and all that?
Yeah, so I feel like that my background was very common. I grew up in a small town. And public school is really the only option. I went to a Montessori school until fourth grade. And so that was a little bit unique for our area. And then just transitioned into the public school system. There's like two options in the town. So it's not a big town to have options. There's no private schools or anything. It's either public school or homeschool. And so with that, I loved school. I had no problems with it. I was a typical student, loved it. I didn't have any problems with public school. I went to a private Christian university for college, and I studied child development and psychology, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with that whenever it came to graduation. And my dad, his number one rule was, don't become a teacher like your mother and your grandmother because your education costs way too much to do that. And of course, lo and behold, I became a first grade teacher right out of college. So I didn't really take any education specific classes in college. It was more of a psychology background, but it was kind of like graduation came about, and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but the school system having breaks sounded really nice at 23 when you graduate. So I stepped into teaching first grade. And I taught for about 2 years, and then I ended up pregnant with my first. And whenever I was at that crossroads where you're like, okay, well, I'm teaching, but I don't know if I would want her to attend this public school. I was teaching at a charter school and I really loved it. However, it was kind of like, well, where do we want to live when we raise our kids? It started getting to that point. And so, yeah, it kind of evolved from there. That education background kind of jumped into well, why don't we move back closer to family, closer to home? And then it gets back full circle that it was either public school or homeschool. And so it kind of, here we are.
Yeah. Okay. So now how many children do you have right now?
Three.
Okay.
So I have oldest is 7, 5, and 1-year-old. So
7,
we're still
5.
in the early years.
Yeah. Well, and you got to the fun of welcoming a new baby as you were in the middle of your first.
Yes. So that was like, for sure. My background education wise, when you're in the public school system, and even just I feel like just society today is like, you start at 3, right? Like, and so of course, being in education and all of that background, I'm like, what are we going to do for preschool? We need to start doing something. And I guess the ironic thing is the more kids you have, I feel like the less stress you feel whenever you have that stress for the first one. So I thankfully have a sweet aunt who homeschooled her 4 children in a Charlotte Mason way. And so she kind of planted seeds, not even just like, hey, I think you should homeschool or you would enjoy doing this, more like, hey, you should read this book. I think you might like it. And kind of the breadcrumbs led to there, like just, oh wait, reading, I really just could be reading to my kids. That's as simple as that. I don't need flashcards or all of the things that, like, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to say people are marketed towards, but it's at the same time, it's just kind of something presented to moms that kind of makes you feel that pressure.
Well, I
And
think it
thankfully I
is
had,
valid to say it is marketing, right? In the sense of, especially because of the government involvement in education, even with home education, a lot of people use charter schools and they receive funds, right? And so what happens is there is truly a market for so many products that, yes, if you don't feel like you need their product, we need to make you feel like you need it, right? That's
sure,
how you're going to get it.
sure.
And it ends up being this big system. But so I'm curious then, so what was it for you early on when you realized, no, I think I do want to homeschool? Was there one specific thing that stood out to you that was like, yeah, that's why I want to homeschool? Or was it more just a like, they're both great options for me, but I think I'm just going to try this and see how it goes?
Yeah. So when I was expecting, I probably was like, I don't know, 6 months into pregnancy. We lived in Fort Worth, which is like a bigger city in Texas. And trying to like, like where are we going to live? What school district could we afford that we would appreciate the school systems and all of that. My parents kind of were like, well, the affordability, you could have land, you could have um, family support, all of these things that I didn't know at the time would play into education and how I would want to raise my kids as much as they do. So it was kind of like that. Okay, well, I guess Googling, you're like, okay, well, at least the schools in Mount Pleasant is where we're at. Like, they're at least a little bit more higher on the ranking scale whenever you Google. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess we could move that way. They're already better than what districts we would be in Fort Worth. And that was kind of the initial thing of like, well, I'll figure that out later. It's not a big deal. I have 5 years to figure out where and what we're going to do. And then came my husband and we are in a small town. And so again, it's just kind of one of those things that naturally picked up that there's not a lot here. Social wise, there's not a lot. It's like family and some rural businesses that are decent businesses, but they're like, we don't have Target, and like Amazon takes 2 days to get here. It's not like same day delivery. It's like we're rural, a little bit more rural. And so we kind of were at the point where we had kids. We had our first two, and it was kind of like, we need to like do something. He is from California and grew up in California backpacking and like all the fun, beautiful things that come with that. And so he's like, we got to get out of the house. Like, we got to go do stuff. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Let's go camping. And I'm like, okay, that's not something that I grew up going outside for sports. And so he's like, no, we're going to like come together. We're going to do this camping thing. And so it's just one of those little tidbits of information I like happened to mention to my family in passing, like at a family dinner. And my aunt was like, that's really Charlotte Mason of you guys, like to just, go out, or wild and free. Like she just mentioned one of those two, like homeschooly kind of things. And I'm like, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Like, I don't need to worry. Or no, I didn't even, it was like a 2-year-old and a 6-week-old. That's where we were at this time. And I was like, okay, those are like, yeah, I've heard you mention those. Like, what about it? And camping has led us to embracing such an appreciation for being truly in awe of God's creation, implanted in like the slowness. And yeah, it just is not where I expected it to be. I thought it would be like sure, we'll do this camping thing and we'll see how it goes, and it will last, a couple weeks and we'll be over it. It has been 5 years, going on 6 years of we have work. Thankfully, we both work from home. We have work from home, homeschool, and on a whim, if we want to go get up and go, like we'll go drive to Yosemite, or we'll go and do like big trips, small trips. It doesn't matter. So it's kind of like, that's kind of where we ended up.
So it was really the flexibility of the schedule in terms of like that you could go camping a lot more as a family. Was that a role in it as well?
A little bit, yeah. I think that once we started embracing that lifestyle, we were like, well, why would we want to give that up? Because we need to be at school in a hurried system and like have a window of like a couple weeks out of the whole year to enjoy that time together as a family. Yeah, it's not anywhere. I think that the crumbs were there for homeschooling, but it wasn't some big life change. It was just kind of a natural occurrence of, this is where we are and we just kind of want to continue it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that because it is like you are kind of finding your identity as a family, right? Which is what happens when you have kids. I don't know how long it was for you before you had children. How long were you married before you had children?
Not long. We were together a while before, like we dated in college and got married after college. You're
Yeah.
asking me all these questions about numbers.
No.
We were married for 3 months, and then I was
Pregnant.
pregnant.
Yeah.
So it was,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so you're just in those days of just trying to figure out, yeah, like who are we as a family? What is this going to look like? And yet you have babies. So you don't have like, it's not like you fully know yet, like where you're headed and what they're going to be like and all those things. So it's
sure.
such a sweet time. But I love that ultimately that you guys kind of caught onto that. Well, we love God's world, right? Like through your husband, which is such a testament to his leadership in your home to be like, yeah, we need a thing. We need something that we're going
Or
to
we're
do.
like doing this, and I'm like, okay, neither of us had ever gone down. I mean, he obviously like had backpacking was like a thing, but like
He's not going to take you
camping with
backpacking.
I was like, I love you so much. And we did go tent camping once. And I was like, I love you, but I will not be doing this with potty training babies. Like it just, I can't see that. I can't see that. So he was like, okay, we'll figure out a way to get us all out there. And I mean, there's nothing better than being out and about and soaking it all in together. And I mean, I think it is one of those things whenever you have children, seeing the world through their eyes is such a gift to the like parents. And so just going on these beautiful trips, sure, is lovely in itself. But seeing your kids experience or like doing hard things, like we're gonna hike this trail and you're gonna have to figure out how to make it.
Mm-hmm.
If you brought all of your stuffies along, you're gonna have to figure out how to carry them. Or, it's just one of those things where
hiking is very interesting to me because I don't know how your kids are, but I've noticed a pattern with my children that they actually handle hard trails better in the sense of like the rise to the challenge. Like you mentioned Yosemite, and we went there back in August. And so we ended up hiking up to the base of El Capitan, which was it's not like some crazy hike, but there's a lot of rocks, especially as you're trying to get up to the base. And I thought I was just going to hang back with our toddler I had at that point, a 2-month-old. So I was like, I'll sit here with the 2-month-old and the toddler, and we'll just wait for you guys to make it all the way up, and you guys can meet us back in the middle of the trail. But my 2-year-old, even as he saw them all leaving, was like, absolutely not. And he just starts following them. And I'm like, well, we'll just see how far we get. And what do you know? That 2-year-old made it all the way up, all this giant pile of rocks and everything, so that he could be up there and take the picture at El Capitan. It was so exciting. But whereas then a couple days later, we were on like a super easy trail. Like we had thought, we've been here a few days, let's do an easy trail. And suddenly everybody was complaining. And I was like, what is happening? Like, it's like,
we just did something really big. Yeah.
Like, we are not babies. Like, what is this? Like, this is too easy. And it was the whole so I just thought that it was interesting. I think I would not have like realized that without experiencing it, that like, it's so easy to think like, oh, like that might be too much for my kids. But really, practically speaking, once you get out there, kids love to feel that sense of accomplishment of like that. No, I can climb up those rocks. I can get up there. I can be with dad. I can, whatever it is.
Yeah. Or it's like, what's around that corner? Like I can maybe see like what's around the, switchback, or like go keep going. And it spurs me on because half the time I'm the problem. I'm like, do I have to? How much further do I have to go? And they're like, Mom, come on. I'm like, okay, we got this together. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Okay, so then what led you from you're embracing camping as a family, you realize we just love having a lifestyle that is rich in being out in God's creation and worshiping God through that and all of those things. And then from there to doing the children's tradition. Because you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I have like a vague memory around when I released the beta that like you had like made all your plans and at the last minute.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So with that, again, my aunt just being like, oh, you're so Charlotte Mason. You're outside like 5, 6, 7, 10 hours a day. And I'm like, okay, give me all your resources. Like, let me borrow your books that you have. So I went down the classic, like For the Children's Sake, Honey for a Child's Heart, I want to say is like the first book that I read. And so then I was like, well, if I'm reading these books about Charlotte Mason, let me just read Charlotte Mason. So that's kind of where I was at. I picked a curriculum that I was like, I'm just going to pick this book list and use it as a book list essentially to start building a library. And again, my kids were like 2, 3, like early ages. So like when I go to the thrift store, or if the library has a book sale, I'm going to pull these books, which ended up being just good books that are just across the board good books. And I was with our first official formal year of education. For year one, I bought all the books. I did all the things for a different curriculum, and I did an entire term. I was on YouTube, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? I'm missing something. I am reading the books. We're like breaking it up. We are getting grumbles for no reason because I'm stopping a story, or like it was just some sort of like broken fragment. It felt fragmented, I guess is like the best way to say. And I was like, we enjoy it, but like I feel like I'm missing something. What am I doing wrong? So I get down this rabbit hole of like, what am I doing wrong? I've done an entire term at this point. I started early in the summer because it's hot here. And we had, I was kind of planted. I was pregnant. It was a great time to do school. So I was like, I'm just going to get a whole term in before I get into like delivery, pregnancy, hormones, like all the end of being pregnant. And so that's when I stumbled upon an interview that you did, and you were talking about releasing this beta curriculum. And I'm like, what is this? I'm going to look into it. I'd obviously been fully immersed in different podcasts and things like that. Like, so I'd just full-fledged in the wardrobe already at this point. But I was like, I don't know if I should chalk it up to pregnancy insomnia. I'm not gonna, because I think it was just the Holy Spirit pressing on me, like, just buy this curriculum beta. Like, I'm justifying. I'm like, okay, if I buy it now, then I can like break up the cost because I've already bought all the books for the whole entire school year, and all of the things that come with like budgeting and calculating and being like, I'm done buying books. Like our school year's set. And so, yeah, I just kind of like on a whim was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong with something else and stumbled upon you and the children's tradition. And it's been the biggest blessing. So yeah. Random.
So that's
divine intervention is what it felt like.
So was it that with our emphasis on the poetic mode, because we will encourage you that you can keep reading if you want to, or you can go longer on a book, was it like that the missing piece? Was it the type of books you were reading in terms of like the quality of the literature? I'm curious, like what was it that felt like that?
Yeah. I really feel like that it was, number one, stopping. My first is a daughter. So I have typical eldest daughter, like I want to sit and please and do. And she was so frustrated stopping after like page 3, like we're going to read 3 pages. We would have narration. And then she'd be like, well, why can't we keep going? Or like, why do we have to stop in the middle of the chapter? And so that was hard to be like, I don't know. It says to, like, I'm supposed to do that. And like, that's our day. And like, we're done. I think that after reading the philosophy section of the curriculum, your curriculum, that it gave me a piece for letting our school days not feel fragmented. It wasn't like, here's school time and here is life. It helped me streamline our whole day is life. And again, I've read Charlotte. I had at this point read at least 2 of Charlotte Mason volumes and all of the books that come with her, from great authors. It was just one of those things where I was like, I don't have to feel like that my bubble of the school day is the hour and a half that we sit down. It can start out as a rhythm of our day, and it can continue to the whole day, the whole rhythm of the day. And ending with bedtime, with stories. I know that like for the first few years we have bedtime read alouds as well. And so that was, I think, the biggest part.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that alone is something that can make home education feel so much more doable when you're not restricted by a sense of, yeah, we have to do it within this certain time, but embracing it as a lifestyle. I mean, especially in the nursery, which of course, as you know, you're in with young kids, like historically, 1st and 2nd graders weren't even going to school, right? So like, we really want them to feel at that age, that sense of like, we're just people who read these books. Well, of course we would want to learn how to read, or of course we would want to play with numbers because like numbers are cool. Reading is awesome. So of course we would want to do these things, that it's more about their identity as a person. And as well, that's just how our family is. We are people who love good books and love nature and love these things versus, well, this is my school time now, so I have to do school. even just the whole idea of school work, right? It's like, it's not work to get to read these books or to get to go, observe a caterpillar outside or to, whatever it might be. It's integrated. It's just our life. And so, yeah, that's really beautiful. So then what does a typical day, I know obviously depending on if you're doing a sort of timetable, maybe day to day, it looks a little bit different, but in general, like what would one day in your life look like from like when you wake up with the little ones to when you put them to bed?
Sure. So like you mentioned, I have younger kids, and at this point, I think it is a little different because my eldest is the one that I'm focusing on. I don't have multiple students, so I don't have to feel the stress of like, okay, we have to hit 3 different timetables of like all of the things. So my younger two, the 5 and 1-year-old, are just a part of the day. And typically I try to have like on a loudspeaker whenever everyone, like I try very hard to wake up before everyone else. It doesn't always happen. But I like whenever I'm trying to cook breakfast, having our composer for the term playing. So like, it's just a peaceful moment to wake up to. I want them to like feel excited about the day whenever they come into, it's not just like, oh, breakfast and all the fury, like the flurry of all of the things. So I typically have the composer study artist going, and then we sit down at the table. I think that adding in prayer and scripture, saint stories have been a big thing. I grew up in a Christian home and am very thankful for that, but I don't feel like that we were ever a part of a tradition that gave any sort of church history. So it's all brand new to me, and I think that having saint stories and reading just like sticky note method through our Bible, and switching back from Old Testament to New Testament has been really sweet, just because I am learning right alongside all of the other kids. And then let's see. So I, again, have the 1-year-old and the 5-year-old, and there's only a certain amount of time that we can window our days for breakfast readings. And so I'll try to do the benediction time during that time, which just would be some recitation, poetry. We love all of our, like the poetry. I could give my daughter a poetry book and she would just be delighted. Like it's been really sweet because I don't know that I'm trying to figure out some of, like, what does this mean? Or like, what are we talking about here? And she just fully loves it because she's had it from the beginning. So that's really sweet. And then of course, by then you're probably like, the 1-year-old needs down, he's done with breakfast. And so we'll have a natural break. So I just chunk our days in natural breaks. We'll pick up, clean up after breakfast and either gather inside on the couch or outside on a picnic blanket. And I just keep a stack of our term books in a basket on my coffee table, always there. And I sticky note method those as well. So we just go through and depending, pretty good, a chapter or like a story or again, just a natural break. I'll have a narration for whichever book we're on for my eldest, and my 1-year-old and 5-year-old are just there chat, like hearing. I don't expect anything from them. But half the time, they'll be like, I want to do, or my 5-year-old will be like, I want to do that too, mom. And I'm like, okay. Or, he'll be like, look, mom, I'm acting like whoever. And they like acting out Shakespeare the best because half the time people die. And so everyone's like,
very dramatic.
Yes. Yeah, very dramatic retellings together, which have been funny.
When you say sticky note method, just in case someone doesn't know what that means, what does it mean when you say that you're using the sticky note method for all of the books?
Sure. So I have an idea of how far I would like to be based on the timetable outline that you give in our curriculum for each book. So if I know I'm expected to finish Alice in Wonderland, I know kind of how many chapters each week we should be going through. But if I have a 1-year-old who needs mom for any sort of reason, I'm okay with sticky noting that, and we will get to the next page the next day or the next time we read that book. Same thing with any of the books that kind of go throughout years or terms. I don't stress over that number. I will be okay with, okay, we read further today than we did yesterday, or we didn't read enough. Like it will be read at some point before moving on to the next chapter. Mm-hmm. And it has been a big like breath of like release, and it doesn't feel like I'm having to stop if we're really enjoying this story. Like we're reading Farmer Boy because we couldn't hold out until year 3. We just couldn't do it. And so we're reading Farmer Boy right now. And so every time I have both kids sitting there, they're like, read another. And I'm like, okay, well, like tell me what we just read, and I'll get like a simple narration back and we'll keep going. It's just a natural, organic way to present and enjoy the books together.
Yeah, I love the sticky note method. It's what we do as well, because like exactly like you're saying, when you have a family and you're not in a controlled classroom, even classrooms, of course, have ebbs and flows, but not to the same degree that a family does, right? And especially when you have little children. But even if it's the older children, maybe some days they're a little off and just can't handle as much. Other days they're like full of energy and are there for it. But regardless, with the sticky note method of just, we're picking up this book and we're going to read it today, however far we can. And yes, the goal is to read at least a chapter or something like that. But we know, like, we can take a deep breath and relax if, hey, didn't get to it. Yep, those toddlers, that toddler needed attention.
I think that you could hear that and say, well, are you treating it like it's child led? And it's not that at all. It is just an organic sense of our day.
Mm-hmm.
And
because
we will get through.
Pick up the book and say, all right, we're reading it, whether or not.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Okay. So that's your kind of morning. You're doing some read alouds in the morning, and then do you take another break or do you go into other things right away?
Typically we'll have some sort of break, and then because someone needs something, like someone needs the bathroom, food, diaper, and then we will do math, a reading lesson. My daughter's reading, and that was a big blessing already coming into year 1. She was reading really well. So it hasn't been a foundational reading lesson to have to add on top of that. So I've been doing that with my 5-year-old because he's just been interested. So we'll either switch between who's doing what. And then I will pick a book for her to read aloud while I'm doing the dishes or something like that. So I can have her practicing reading aloud to me, checking off lunch. So I'll prep lunch and she'll just sit at the counter and read to me while I'm doing that. And from there, I feel like those are probably the big things: math, reading, literature. I think that's pretty much.
Do you do occupations? Like, do you do a formal nature study with her yet, or are you more just focused on getting outside and just letting her enjoy?
We read the Burgess books. We go outside, and I feel like that I've used the Handbook of Nature Study as a after the fact, if that makes sense. So we will go out if we are looking intently upon a spider web situation. We can come back in and talk about the different types of webs that the spiders can make, or if we find like weird looking pods of something, we can say, what is this? It looks kind of like it could be a caterpillar, but wait, it's actually something else. I mean, I've used the nature study book for coming back inside after reflecting outside and finding the whatever it happens to be. If it's different types of tree bark, like we'll come back in and read. Or I know that whenever we read the bird book last year, we talked about like what different things they had, body wise on the birds. We've had chickens at some point in our life, so like the birds were like a big hit because we kind of have already gone down that rabbit hole of like really having them. We keep bees, and so like that's been a big fun one. So we'll go check the bees with Dad, and the kids and Dad will have their bee suits on and kind of get to talk about different things that happen with that, or like planting wise, we can discuss what we want to put in our garden and then come back in. So it's kind of like we do it and then come back in nature study wise. Or I will send them out and be like, go nature journal something. And they come back in and they're like, look, Mom, and they'll watercolor it or whatever, that kind of thing. So
I love that.
Think of anything else in our days.
I really think
we do Latin.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah. No, I'm just trying to go through our days and think of what we do. We do Latin. We do a Latin class this year, just because last year I tried to do a curriculum and I loved it, and I'll do it probably next year. But having the newborn, I think we did the same lesson like 5 times, and then I was like, we're really good at these songs, and we know Row Row Your Boat really, really well. However, it's not capacity with the newborn right now. So this year I did a Latin class for my eldest, and she's really enjoyed it. So that's kind of like the one thing that I feel like I guess outsourced in a way, just because it's not something I'm confident in. I'm in the mothers group, or trying to be. I bought my book late. In the tool shed, there's a group of moms who are doing a Latin study, and so I'm excited to feel more confident in that with a group of mom friends. So
I'm impressed by them. Yeah, I'm impressed by seeing everybody said they're using words that I don't know what they're meaning when they're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and the biggest blessing I will say is like I jumped in with the beta year, and I've been like, hey guys, have you heard about this curriculum? And so I've recruited several moms in my area to do it. And so I have one of the moms is also in the Latin class, and she's like, if you do it with me, I would love a friend. Yeah, I will do it with you. So
it makes me excited when I think of all of our children who might have a chance of, and specifically I think of our daughters who might have a chance of homeschooling their children in 15 years or 20 years from now. And like they'll already know Latin so that they'll get to teach them, right? Because I know for all of us, we're trying to recover this thing that we don't have. And so it's just, outsourcing is a great way to do it. In our case, we have a tutorial, and we have a teacher who a homeschool mom who's been teaching Latin for 12 years, and she was willing to teach our class. And so as soon as she was willing to do it, I did it the first year for our tutorial, but I was very grateful to have someone with more experience come in the second year, because a language is hard, and it's really a blessing when you have somebody who knows what's going on.
Or like a friend too, to like be like, we'll do this together, and we'll learn it together, and
yeah.
we'll do it together. And like that was it. It's a very, very nice thing to have for sure.
Because you can. Oh, I love that. Okay. And so then that leads into evenings. And then, like you said, are you pulling books from the curriculum for bedtime read alouds, or do you have other books that you're doing for that time?
It just depends on the day. Typically, yes. Just because they're just good books that everyone wants to read anyways. Or like they'll be like, Mom, we got a new book in the mail. What could it be? And I'm like, oh, it could be a curriculum book. It just so happens.
Yeah.
So we will read other books, not just off of John Senior's list. I'm not like a stickler on like, we must only read these books at home. We read all across good books. But typically The Princess and Curdie holds a dear place in my heart. And so we've loved George MacDonald and being immersed in his worlds. So yeah, those are, I feel like again, right now they're just like, can we read Farmer Boy again, for bedtime, or like anytime they're like, we would like to read Farmer Boy if they had to choose. So
Farmer Boy is kind of the best. So who can blame them? And so you just,
well, and the funny thing is like, I've never read any of I don't know. I feel like I liked school and I liked books as a kid, but I have not read the whole entirety of, the Little House series. So I'm like, we're going to start and we're just going to keep going. And it is a big treat to just get to recover your education along with your kids, for sure.
Yeah. So then that spans your whole day, right? There's nothing else you want to touch on?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much, again, we just kind of organically go and.
Yeah, you just do it. So then has there been, or what has there been as far as challenges with, this has been your first couple of years of homeschooling, using TCT. What have been some challenges you faced, or something of that nature?
I feel like it's a personal challenge, not necessarily for the kids, is I have become very aware of how horrible a narrator I am. So when people ask me, what do you do for homeschool? Like, what does that look like? I'm like, that is a great question. Because I feel like I can read like anything, like philosophy, but telling it back to someone in a way that I feel like my words make sense to someone has been the hardest thing. And so whenever I'm like, we do a classical education that's like based on Charlotte Mason and John Senior's works, and they're like, okay, what does that mean? I'm like, So that's been the funny thing that like my friends and I have discussed, because the ones that I have a couple friends again that are in our town that do the children's tradition together, and we're all like, yeah, we love it, and we can read the philosophy, we can read John Senior, we can read Charlotte Mason and be fully on board. But telling it back to someone in a way that I'm like, okay, we need an elevator pitch. We focus on an embodied education in wonder. Like that's been my thing. I'm like, okay, thank goodness for the, like, I don't want to say tagline, but like holding on to that. Yeah. Holding on to that. I'm like, here we go. And then it prompts other things. I think that there haven't been any challenges at this point, since we have made it a way of life for our kids, that we just are a family that has no, we don't do screens or anything. So we just read a lot of books. We have math, we have beautiful art. We listen to, my son often calls it sleepy baby music because it's like instrumental and things like that. I'm like, we've made it a way of life. So we haven't had any hurdles to jump over in the sense of trying to recover or backtrack any typical, I don't know, mainstream things. It's just me personally realizing how hard narration actually is, and I appreciate my kids being able to do it so much better than I can.
No, kids are, it is a humbling thing, yes, when you try to narrate yourself, or like you're saying, not even like in a formal way, but just someone asks you about something and you realize like, man, it is interesting how much we can take in. And yet, yes, to represent it to another person it takes great effort. And I think it's a good thing though to experience that as a mom, so that when we see our kids doing it, especially when they're little, they're still learning how to do it, and they, have good narrating days and bad narrating days. And so to just be like, well, yeah, narrating's hard. So, you're doing great. But yeah, when you just stick with it, it makes me so happy to hear that, just that because you've been able to start early on, that you didn't have some of the hurdles that might, naturally would come if you had done other types of education. So that's beautiful and exciting that you kind of got it on that foundational floor. So then with, obviously TCT has like the literature book list, artist, composer, there's history read alouds, nature studies prescribed, like all these things. But are there any other curriculums that you're using to supplement what you do in terms of reading lessons or I don't know, history? There's anything extra?
No, I am only using TCT. Again, I think that whenever you realize and can understand better the poetic way and mode of learning, that we can read, for example, last year we read Dr. Dolittle, and it talked about a drifting island close to South America, and it was getting further and further down. You just naturally pick up, well, where is South America? Okay, let's look it up, and we will look at it on a globe or a map, and we can talk about, well, why is it bad for those plants and life? I'm trying to think of like whatever else was on the island. Why was it bad that the island was getting colder and colder? We had those discussions naturally. They just naturally came up because we were reading a book that prompted ideas, and we didn't force, I didn't force anything, trying to like, let's dissect it. Let's plan to talk about the equator today. Like it just kind of, again, you have these things in the back of your mind, like, okay, we have talking about the compass or whatnot, from our elementary Charlotte Mason book, but I can apply them naturally in a way where we just pick them up through the stories we're reading. And I think that whenever I saw that, I realized, number one, it could be refreshing on my end to not feel like I have to overcompensate and overdo. We will already naturally be involved in these ideas in a way that's, again, not cut apart, not forced. Yeah.
I think to your point, it's interesting how I would say for me, trying to explain to people how much knowledge is integrated is one of the harder things to explain, right? Because once you've experienced it, you're reading these books. Yes, we do a geography book, but it's a very simple geography, right? We're not beating a dead horse with geography. We like cover the basics of geography in this book. In third and fourth grade, which your kids are not there yet, but when you get to that grade, then we do focus on reading the questions and answers each week, which then they essentially end up memorizing them by doing that. So you kind of give them like that foundation, which I think is a really great foundation as far as geography goes. But something like that, ultimately, you're spending 15, 20 minutes on it a week. if that. And yet that is plenty. And you realize how much something like geography is woven all throughout your history studies, the literature you're reading, even your artist and composer, because you're going to talk about a place, right? Where did this artist come from? Where does this composer come from? Let's look at our map. But it's one of those things too, that those like magical connections that the children make and even you make as you're doing these studies, you can't really express that until you've experienced it. Like, you just have to experience it. Like, until you are joining that, why is it called the great conversation, right? Like, you get to suddenly be a part of the conversation that's happening between books, and even between books and nature and the created world and art and music, and all these things are like talking to each other. But to explain that to someone who maybe hasn't experienced that, it's just kind of hard. Because like you said, it's not like you're writing it down like, oh, well, I remember one day we laughed about it at our tutorial, because it was like our fable, our Shakespeare, the poem all had like a word, like it was a vocabulary word that they had asked about and they didn't know. And so they were talking about it. And then the fable totally pertained to the story we read in Shakespeare. And they were like, oh my gosh, we were just talking about that with our fable. Like, this is what a fool is like. And that character is doing that thing. And like, the whole day was just, and of course, is every day like that? No. And sometimes it's even more spread apart, where you'll remember, oh, from that fable from 3 weeks ago or last month or something. But regardless, these relationships are happening all the time, and the children are making them and you're making them. And yet it's just like, yeah, you just have to see it to believe it, almost, to be like, just
it's
like,
truly organic, or like a guiding thread woven through. And it's not on our end. It's not human made. It is truly a gift that God and the Holy Spirit just provides for you whenever you have eyes to see it. And I mean, like what you just said, one of the biggest moments I think we had last year was with stargazing. We're camping a lot. And so we're like outside when it's dark. So that just kind of was an easy, natural thing to throw in. And my daughter was like, there's Cassiopeia. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, sure. And then we read it in the Greek myths, like same thing. It's like, you read it in Greek myths, it comes across in Shakespeare, and you're just like, wow, it is where you wouldn't think to look. It's going to be there. And it is very, very sweet to just, again, have that pressure of me trying. Because I think that like, whenever you're a homeschool mom, you feel the pressure to need to get it right. And I think whenever you take a step back and you can have that breath of fresh air of like, it is going to be okay. And look at what God has already done for these kids that are, 7 years old, and talking about constellations and Shakespeare and Greek myths that are all intertwined. And same with you guys. Like, it's just a sweet, sweet gift that when you do have eyes to see, you can appreciate it. Again, it's truly like opening your eyes to like a world that, my aunt and I were like, what, when your eyes are open, like, how can you not see it? How can you not appreciate it? How can you not live in it? And so, yeah, it's truly a big blessing.
Yeah, that's, that idea of being able to see, right? That's really a historic image in terms of Plato's cave, right? That, like, the idea of being in darkness in the cave and then to come out into the light. And I think, that's why Autumn Kern uses that idea of going through the wardrobe, or we'll try to use expressions like, like falling into Wonderland, whatever it is, like, to try to express that there's something on the other side of this kind of education. And yet, as much as we can try to articulate and describe it, until there is something to be said about the experience of it, to experience a world that is, to use Gerard Manley Hopkins' phrase, charged with the grandeur of God. Like, I think that's what ultimately is the sense of which that educating in the poetic mode gives you, is a sense of like, God's glory is everywhere. Like, how, like, the truth and the goodness and beauty that is just truly all over the place. It just, and then that you get to do that as a mom, you're like, this is my job. I get to educate my children and teach them and to share in that beauty. It's just so good. So I feel like you kind of already answered this question. So if you don't have another answer, that's okay. But if there is another answer, what do you think, has there been anything that has surprised you about educating this way beyond what we've already talked about in terms of to go into this educating in the poetic mode?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing is just viewing your whole day, your whole life as a chance to encounter education in a natural way. That's been something, again, I came from the classroom, and so I was teaching 20, 30 kids at a time. And really, I think it comes down to humanizing education is what we get to do. When you're educating classically, you are human. You are valuing the human in itself, like truly. You're not having to segregate things. You're not having to segregate your day. Um, I think that was probably the biggest surprise because I definitely came into it thinking it wouldn't feel as just a natural rhythm of our day. I was like, okay, school's starting. We have to school. And it just feels like your normal day. I don't really even have to say Monday through Friday we are schooling. If we want to read our poetry book on Saturday or Sunday, like we will go grab it. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest surprise. Or just like the peace that comes with it. I think that we've talked on a mom's call that first beta year about how peaceful and restful the year felt. And again, coming into homeschooling with a 5-year-old, a newborn baby, or I guess 4, whatever, small children, I was expecting it to feel a lot less stressful. And it was the biggest blessing.
I love that. Well, I think so much of kind of like you said, homeschool, as a homeschool mom, like you want to get it right. But with the philosophy of the poetic mode, we're reoriented to define what that even means, right? That it's not merely, yes, okay, we have to cipher out every single subject and its unique things of its checklist of what we have to teach in history, science, and language arts and math and all the things, everything separated out, but actually being able to embrace the simplicity of just classical pedagogy, right? At the end of the day, modernity has really inflated what education has become and made it so much more complicated than what had been working for thousands of years and making some of, far more educated people than we are today for the most part.
Sure.
And yet it was simple, right? It was simple copy work, simple narration, simple reading stories, learning Latin, all those things. So I love that. I love that when you talk about that humanizing education, it's C.S. Lewis who talks about in Abolition of Man that the old way was men transmitting manhood, right? That we're passing on, this is what it is to be human. And our children, if they can learn how to be human and have that image of God in them, right? To reflect him, to reflect that image, to honor him and glorify him, well, then everything else will fall into place. All the other things that the world wants to focus on education about, job readiness or something of that nature. And yet it's like, but if you are a whole person who knows and loves God and has been filled with these stories and language and the ability to communicate and narrate and talk and yes, do math and observe God's word, all those things, you're going to be fine. You'll be able to do.
Well, those things come naturally. Those just like when you are fulfilled and participating as a human and not a machine or not a what do you think about things in all aspects of life, you get to participate in the world in a different way that I think that you will show up as your best self. You have the virtues and the willingness to want to go out and be your best self, that those things come naturally. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to say we need to set at 4th grade. We need to figure out we were going to be a dentist and go from there and focus on that. I think that when you are a whole rounded out human and can appreciate that, it just naturally, like, you don't have to stress about what am I going to be when I grow up? Because I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. My mom always says that still to this day. My mom's like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like, we're still growing.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. This has been so fun hearing about your homeschool. For us to end on, is there a piece of homeschooling advice that you received at any point that has just made a big difference to you in how you approach things?
I feel like I've kind of touched on it a little bit throughout. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen, and I've probably seen people post about it or people have just mentioned it in passing, but that we aren't guaranteed outcomes as homeschool moms. Like, we're just because we are homeschooling doesn't mean we are guaranteed our kids are going to become XYZ. We aren't the sovereign ones. We are can do and show up and be faithful in all of the ways. But we're not guaranteed an outcome for our kids, and we're not guaranteed that they will have an easy life, because I mean, all of us go through our own trials. And I think that knowing that now, again, it just sets that piece that I can go forward of like, we're doing our best here. I can have the time. That's the biggest blessing of like homeschooling, is that you get that time with your kids to have extra discipleship with them. You get to have the extra time to create family culture that they might not have otherwise. But that doesn't mean that they're going to succeed in all they do. That doesn't mean they won't suffer from the world or in different ways. But knowing that we've cultivated as much as we can in this season and forever, however long that leads us. Like, we're not promised tomorrow, but we also, like, who knows if we're going to move to the middle of somewhere else and have to send our kids to school for any reason. Like, you're just not guaranteed those outcomes. But just showing up faithfully, I think, is the biggest homeschool advice that I have seen and witnessed.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, McKenzie, for coming on. It has been absolutely a delight to just hear about, as much as you might struggle to narrate to other people on the spot, you did a beautiful job sharing with all of us the beauty of your homeschool and what's happening in your family. And for those of you who are watching or listening, I would just encourage you to join McKenzie and I in the Toolshed if you're interested in learning more about poetic knowledge, what it looks like to have a poetic life as a family, like McKenzie's been sharing. It is not a school from 9 to 12 or 9 to 3. It is a way of life. And so we have classes going on there, like she mentioned, Mother's Tradition, book club, Latin groups, all sorts of things. So we invite you to join us there. But other than that, McKenzie, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.